Purim Sameach, everyone on YouTube. We are slowly getting the people inside here, the sanctuary, to start with our service. But in the meantime, Purim Sameach to all of you, and wonderful to have quite a bigger number also on YouTube joining us this evening for our Purim service and the reading of the Megillah. It will perhaps take another 5 minutes to get everyone in the sanctuary, but it shouldn't be a problem. Looking forward also to reading your comments in the live chat of YouTube. Please feel free to add your festival greetings, and then enjoy the evening. In the meantime, sing a little song to yourself. We'll be here shortly.
תשאיר לנו משהו.
איזה חמודים אתם. אז ילדים, בואו נעשה שמח. מי שנכנס אדר, מרבים בשמחה. 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 מי שנכנס אדר, מי שנכנס אדר, מי שנכנס אדר, מרבים בשמחה. 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 אשר ישלטו היהודים המה בשונאיהם. אשר ישלטו היהודים המה בשונאיהם. חג פורים, חג גדול ליהודים, מסכות רשעים, שיר וריקודים. חג פורים, חג גדול ליהודים, מסכות רשעים, שיר וריקודים. הבה נגישה, ברשנים. הבה נגישה, ברשנים. ברשנים. ויהי בימי אחשוורוש, המולך מהודו ועד כוש, שבע ועשרים ומי המדינה, המולך מהודו ועד כוש, שבע ועשרים ומי המדינה. Chayavim ish livisumei, livisumei, livisumei. Chayavim ish livisumei, livisumei, livisumei. לא ידע, לא ידע, עדה לא ידע, עדה לא ידע, עדה לא ידע, עדה לא ידע.
Purim Sameach. Make some noise. Okay, just to give you a little idea, and for those who are still outside, don't worry, have your soup and come slowly in, but we will start with a short service, and then we will have our Megillah reading, where I invite everyone who is here to contribute to the reading, and then we continue also with the celebration. So I can't see anything. And once again, Chag Purim Sameach. Our service itself is a regular evening service. We read on a weekday. The only addition is that in the Amidah, in the prayer, in the thank you prayer, we have an addition for Purim, which we will read together, and I will give all of you, also those who are at home and are on YouTube, also a time for reflection. There is, of course, a notion that this Purim is taking place and that we're celebrating Purim, knowing that other people in the world at this moment can't celebrate because of the war in the Ukraine. And we hope that with our service this evening and also with our reflections, they know that we're thinking of them, and that perhaps a little bit of the joy we have this evening will shortly return also to their homes, and that they can shortly again also celebrate with us the festivals of joy, of simcha, and also be thankful for the creation of this world. We're on page 66 in our Sidurim, and if you're able to, you can rise for the first beginning for the Baruch Hu, and then we'll continue. Vehu rachum yichaper avon velo yashtit vehirba lahashiv apoho velo ya'ir kol chamatoho barechu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed. And you may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chokhmah potech sha'arihim ובדבונה משנה עתים ומחליב את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמורותיהם ברקיע כרצונו אור יום בלילה גואל אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור המעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים. Blessed are you, God, who brings on the evening twilight. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amcha ahavta. With everlasting love have you loved your people, the family of Israel, teaching and practice duty and justice. These you have taught us. Therefore, our God and guide, we think upon all these before we sleep and when we wake, and rejoice and delight in your teaching and its practice forever and ever. For they are our life and the measure of all our days. We keep them in mind both day and night. Never take your love away from us. Baruch atah Adonai ohev et amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, God, who loves your people Israel. And we have the first important stop in this service, the Shema, and we'll take a deep breath and sing together. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. אהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. And we have a short moment for our private reflections and private readings of for the second paragraph of the Shema. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו הציצית הכנף ותתכלת, והיה לכם לציצית, וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, amen. With great joy, Moses and Miriam and the children of Israel answered God in song, all of them saying, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neda b'kodesh, nora tehilot, our living God, your children saw your rule over the sea of reeds. All of them as one honored you as sovereign, saying, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Ki fada Adonai et Yaakov u'goalo miyad chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai ga'al Yisrael. For the Almighty had set Jacob free and rescued him from a hand stronger than his own. Blessed are you, God, who rescues Israel. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, leshalom, v'hamidenu malkeinu lechaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, leshalom, v'hamidenu malkeinu lechaim. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני שומע עמו ישראל לעד. ברוך אדוני ביום, ברוך אדוני בלילה, ברוך אדוני בשוכבנו, ברוך אדוני בקומנו, כי בידך נפשות החיים והמתים, אשר בידו נפש כל חי ורוח כל אשר בשר איש, בידך אף רוחי, פידית אותי אדוני אל אמת, אלוהינו שבשמיים יחד שמך וקיים מלכותך תמיד ומלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. And now we turn to the Amidah, and if you're able to, please rise. And we will do the first three blessings of the Amidah together. Then I will give you time for your reflections, and then we'll return for the Ritzeh prayer together to end the blessings of the Amidah. Adonai sefata tiftach ufi yagit tehillatech. Adonai sefata tiftach ufi yagit tehillatech. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'Elohei imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, קונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם, פוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחייב מתים ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. And on the bottom of page 76, אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקידושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. And page 77 to 82 are for our private readings. page 83. יצא אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל ותפילתם שאל, וברחמך הרבים תחפוץ בנו ותשרה שכינתך על ציון. And on top of 84, ותחזינה עינינו בתשובה לציון ברחמים. ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון. מודים אנחנו לך שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו לעולם ועד. צורנו צור חיינו ומגן ישענו אתה הוא, לדור ודור נודה לך ונשפה את תהילתך על חיינו המסורים בידיך ועל נשמותינו הפקודות לך, ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו ועל נבלעותיך וטובותיך שבכל עת ערב ובוקר וצהריים. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך המרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך כי מעולם קיווינו לך. And please turn to page 384, but leave your finger in the page 84, where we have the insert for Purim. Al-Hanisim, we thank you for the wonders, the victories, and the marvelous and consoling deeds you performed for our ancestors in those days at this season. In the days of Mordecai and Esther in Shushan, the capital, when the wicked Haman rose up against them, he sought to destroy, kill, and exterminate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, on one day, and plunder their possessions. That is the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Then you, in your great mercy, upset his plan and overthrew his design, and made his act recoil upon his own head. And you performed a wonder and a marvel for them. Therefore, we thank your great name. Venodeh l'shemcha hagadol. And we return to page 85. And for all these things, may your name, our sovereign, be blessed, exalted, and honored forever and ever. וכל החיים יודוך סלע והללו ויברכו את שמך הגדול באמת האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך ולך נאה להודות. And on the next page, on page 86, Shalom ha'av Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom ha'av Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom ha'av Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom ha'av Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol et ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. And you may be seated for a short moment, and I give you another opportunity for your private prayers and private thoughts and meditations before we conclude the Amidah with Oseh Shalom and continue with the concluding part for our service. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol ha'olam. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh Shalom Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol ha'olam. Oseh Shalom b'mromav Hu yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol ha'olam. Imru. Amen. And once more, I ask you please to rise as we turn to page 310 for the Aleinu. And Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, התת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לבני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו וגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אף בזולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום השבותה אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת עינות. 313 על כן נקווה לך אדוני אלוהינו לראות מהרה בתפארת עוזך, להעביר גילולים מן הארץ, והאלילים קרות יכרתון. May this peace really come soon, that all the evil is erased from the surface of this world. לתקן עולם במלכות שדי, וכל בני בשר יקראו בשמך, להפנות אליך כל ראשי הארץ, יכירו וידעו כל יושבי תבל, כי שותפים כולנו בתיקון עולמך, כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי עד תמלוך. בכבוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. And please turn to page 320 for the Adon Olam, and we will try something. Yeah. אדון עולם השם הלך בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא כחפצו כל הזימל לשמו נקרא, ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא, והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה. אדון עולם השם הלך בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל הזימל לשמו נקרא, ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא, והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה. והוא אחד ואין שני, להמשילו להכבירה, בלי ראשי בלי להחליף, ולא העוס והמזרע. והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצוחב לי ביום צרה, והוא ניסי ומנוסי מנת כוסי ביום מכה. אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא, עת נשא כחפצו כל הזימל לשמו נקרא. בידו אף קידוחי בית ישן ועירה, ועם רוחי גבייתי אדוני לי ולא ירא. אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא, עת נשא כחפצו כל הזימל לשמו נקרא. ניי ניי נה 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 ניי נה 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 ניי 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 נה נה ניי נה 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 ניי ניי. Thank you, Chaim. Please stay there. Now you can take your Megillot we have, of course, one wonderful kosher Megillah here. And the idea or the tradition is usually that you take it out, you unroll it, and then you fold it like a letter. And that is because we learn that Mordechai was sending a letter to all the Jewish communities with the instruction for the Purim celebration. And it is a little bit like that we today only received the letter and therefore celebrating and observing all the laws that were given us by Esther and Mordechai. This scroll is still too nice. I don't want to fold it, so I will hold it. But we have also this long letter in an English version for you, and those who are on YouTube, you just need to listen very carefully. We will read it with different voices during the service now, and feel free on YouTube to also to leave your little comments. If you want to greet your fellow congregants, you can do that in the live chat, and we would be delighted to read then some at the end. Don't write anything if you're already too drunk. The blessing for the Purim or for the reading of the scroll is on page 385. Those who learned Hebrew with me should know it already by heart because we practiced. And page 385. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mikra Megillah. And because it is a special festival service, and we're actually also celebrating back here in the synagogue for the first time since 2 years, we add the 2 additional blessings. The first one is once again to recognize that God's service behind the scene in the book of Esther, and since then, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavotenu ve'imotenu bayamim hahem uvazman haseh. Blessed are you, O living God, sovereign of the universe, who did wonders for our ancestors in those days at this season. And the Shehechiyanu Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehechiyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. And we're on the first side or first page, chapter 1, and it is a little bit a shortened version for those who are following at home in their Kumashim, in their Tanakh, so please don't be confused. I'll hold it just so that I can see it. ויהי בימי אחשוורוש, הוא אחשוורוש המולך מהודו ועד כוש 27 ומאה מדינה בשנת 3 למלכו עשה משתה לכל שריו ועבדיו וגם ושתי המלכה עשתה משתה נשים בית המלכות אשר למלך אחשוורוש ביום השביעי כתוב לב המלך ביין אמר להביא את ושתי המלכה לבני המלך בכתר מלכות להראות העמים והשרים את יפה כי טובה מראה היא. And it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus who reigned from Hodu to Cush over 127 provinces. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a banquet for all his princes and his servants. Also Vashti the queen made a banquet for the women in the royal palace, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded to bring Vashti, the queen, before the king with the royal crown to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was beautiful to look at. But the queen Vashti refused to come to the king's command by his eunuchs, and the king was very angry, and his anger burned in him. And the king said to the wise man, "What shall we do to the queen Vashti according to law, because she has not performed the command of the king Ahasuerus by the eunuchs? What shall we do with the queen Vashti according to law? What shall we do with the queen Vashti according to law?" And Menuhan answered, "In the presence of the king and the princess, for the deed of the queen shall be known to all women, so that they shall despise their husband in their eyes, when it shall be reported that the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought into his presence, but she came not, but she came not, but she came not. If it please the king, let the royal command be issued by him, and let it be written among the laws that Vashti is to come no more to the presence of King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she." Chapter 2.
I won't sing. After these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus was appeased, and let the king appoint officials in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the young virgins of good presence in Shushan, the capital of the harem. And let the girl which pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. There was a Jewish man in Shushan, the capital, and his name was Mordecai.
Yay!
And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter. So it came to pass that Esther was brought to the king's palace, to the custody of Haggai, guardian of the women. Esther had not declared her people nor her country, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not tell. Now, when the turn of Esther came, Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus to his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month Tebet, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the other women, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigtan and Teresh, of those who guarded the door, were angry and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the matter was known to Mordecai, who told it to Esther the queen, and Esther informed the king of it in Mordecai's name. And when inquiries were made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore, they were both hanged on the tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king.
Wonderful. Now we need a next one who would like to read chapter 3. Both of you, you can both come.
And after all these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman and advanced him. And all the king's servants who were in the king's gate bowed and did not obedience to Haman. For the king had so commanded concerning him, but Mordecai did not bow nor did him obedience. And when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow nor did him obedience, then was Haman full of wrath. And then Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai. And Haman said to King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in the provinces of your kingdom, and their laws are different from those of every other people, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore, if it's not the king's profit to tolerate them, if it please the king, then let it be decreed that they may be destroyed. And the king said to Haman, the silver is given to you, the people also, to do with them as it seems good to you. These are the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded, to destroy king and annihilate all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar.
When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes, then went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry. So Esther's maids and her came and told her. Then was the queen exceedingly distressed. Then called Esther for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, whom he had appointed to attend on her, and gave him a command to Mordecai to learn what this was and why it was. And Hathach came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again, Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a command for Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that whether a man or woman shall come to the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is a law to put him to death, except such whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come to the king these 30 days. And they told Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not yourself that in the king's palace you shall escape any more than all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, then shall relief and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house shall be destroyed. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Then Esther bade them return to Mordecai this answer: go gather together all the Jews who are present in Shushan, and fast for me, and neither eat or drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my girls will fast likewise, and so will I go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him.
Thank you very much. More? You want to read the next chapter?
Was on the third day that Esther put on her royal dress and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, opposite to the king's palace. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal palace opposite the gatehouse. And it was so, when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she found favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther Oh, sorry, am I repeating? So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king to her, "What do you wish, Queen Esther, and what is your request? It shall be given to you, even to the half of the kingdom." And then Esther answered, "If it seemed good to the king, let the king and Haman come this day to the banquet that I have prepared for him." Then the king said, "Make Haman hurry, that he may do as Esther has said." So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said to Esther at the banquet of wine, "What is your petition? And it shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even to half the kingdom it shall be granted." Then Esther answered and said, "My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to grant my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king has said." Then Haman went out that day, joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he did not stand nor stir for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. And Haman said, and Esther the queen did not let no man come in with the king to the banquet that she had prepared, but myself, and tomorrow I am also invited to her with the king. Yet all this avails me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. And Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends said to him, "Let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak to the king that Mordecai may be hanged on it, and then go in cheerfully with the king to the banquet." And the thing pleased Haman, and he had the gallows made.
On that night, the king could not sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of the records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, and the keepers of the door, who sought to lay a hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, "What honor and dignity has been done to Mordecai for this?" Then said the king's servants who ministered to him, "Nothing was done for him." And the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had come into the outward court of the king's palace to speak to the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servant said to him, "Behold, Haman stands in the court." And the king said, "Let him come in." So Haman came in. And the king said to him, "What shall be done to the man whom the king delights to honor?" Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom the king delights to honor, no more than himself. And Haman answered the king, "To the man whom the king delights to honor, let the royal clothing be brought, which the king wears, and the horse that the king rides upon, and the crown which is set upon his head. And let this clothing and horse be delivered to the hand of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man with whom the king delights to honor, and bring him on horseback through the streets of the city, and proclaim before him. And thus it shall be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." Then the king said to Haman, "Hurry and take the clothing and the horse as you have said, and do so to Mordecai, the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that you have spoken." Then took Haman the clothing and the horse and arrayed Mordecai and brought him on horseback through the street of the city and proclaimed before him, "This shall be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." And Mordecai came to the king's gate. But Haman hurried to his house mourning and having his head covered. And Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had befallen him. And while they were still talking with him, came the king's eunuchs and hurried to bring Haman to the banquet Queen Esther had prepared. So the king and Haman came to the feast with Esther the queen. And the king said to Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, "What is your petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted to you. And what is your request? It shall be fulfilled, even to half of the kingdom." Then Esther the queen answered and said, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my knife be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to be annihilated. But if we had been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept my silence, since the affliction would not have equaled the king's damage." And then the king Ahasuerus answered and said to Esther the queen, "Who is he? Where is he? What that he presumes in his heart to do so?" Esther said, "The adversary and the enemy is this wicked Haman." Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And Harbonah, one of the eunuchs, said before the king, "Behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king. It stands in the house of Haman." Then the king said, "Hang him on it." So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's wrath was pacified.
Thank you. So let's pray it up.
And Esther spoke once more before the king and fell down at his feet and pleaded with tears to avert the evil design of Haman, the Agagite, and his plot that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter towards Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king. Then the king Ahasuerus said to Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, "Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows because he would lay his hand upon the Jews. And you write about the Jews as you please in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the decrees which are decreed in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring, no man can revoke. By these the king authorized the Jews who were in every city to gather themselves together and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to annihilate any armed force of any people or province that might attack them, infants and women, and to plunder their goods. On one day in all of the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in the royal clothes of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, wherever the king's command and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them.
And in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day, the Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And the king said to Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan, the capital, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your petition? And it shall be granted you. Or what is your request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews who are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according to this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters to all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both near and far, to establish this amongst them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly, like the days when the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned to them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning to a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions to one another and gifts to the poor.
Well done. And just as a concluding blessing, blessed are you, our living God, sovereign of the universe, who heard our plea and judged our cause. You are the one who has always saved us and hope in every generation. May those who trust in you never be ashamed or humiliated. Blessed are you, God, the power that saves us. Amen. Thank you for the reading. Unfortunately, we have actually quite lekker soup here and other nice treats. Those who are on YouTube, unfortunately, we can't share that with you, but I hope you have also a happy evening together. And we say goodbye to the live stream. Follow us this evening. Thank you that you joined us this wonderful evening. And we hope to see you all on Shabbat and Purim Sameach.